This is Doug Edwards, and I'm with the Old Highway 7 Church of Christ here in Darnell, Arkansas. And I'd like to ask you a question. Have you ever started a project before and then been interrupted by something you perceive to be more important? Well, that happens pretty often in our lives, and it seems like it's a situation that might have happened in the Bible. Over in the book of Jude, in verse 3, Jude said, "Beloved, while I was very diligent to write to you concerning our common salvation, I found it necessary to write to you, exhorting you to contend earnestly for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints." Jude seems to have been writing a little tract, a little work of some kind, concerning the common salvation. When he says common, not that it's common in the sense of being ordinary, but common in the sense of being universal for all men. But as he was writing this treatise on the common salvation, something came along that caused him to see the need to change his direction and write something else. That which came along involved the threat of false teaching. There were false teachers in the area that were teaching things that were leading God's people astray. And so therefore, Jude saw the need of changing what he was writing concerning the common salvation and direct this particular issue toward the threat of false teaching. And so Jude makes this expression, says this expression, that we are to contend earnestly for the faith that was once delivered to the saints. I'd like to study with you these words. Sometimes in the Bible there are thoughts, sentences, where that every word almost makes a sermon in and of itself. Every word is critical. Every word is important. And we have to study that sentence word by word. That seems to be the case here. Each little word contributes to the importance overall of this sentence. For example, Jude begins with the idea of contending earnestly. He says that we are to contend earnestly for the faith. Now, the words contend earnestly literally mean to wrestle. We are to wrestle, to struggle for the faith. But when Jude uses the word contend earnestly, to struggle, to wrestle, he was not using it in a physical sense. He was not saying that we are to go out there and physically fight for the gospel. In fact, on one occasion, one of the Lord's disciples intended to do that. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter had previously boasted that, "Lord, if push comes to shove, I will fight for you. I will die for you. Others may run, but you can count on me." In the Garden of Gethsemane, when those priests and the soldiers they had with them came to arrest Jesus, Peter was ready to keep his word. Peter whipped out his sword and actually cut off the ear, the left ear of the servant of the high priest. And Jesus said on that occasion to Peter, "Put up your sword, for they who use the sword will perish by the sword," in Matthew chapter 26. When Jesus said to Peter, "Put up your sword," he forever sheathed the swords of all Christians as far as physical fighting is concerned. It's not our responsibility to physically fight for the gospel. It is to be then a figurative fight. We are to wrestle figuratively for the truth. Now, our obligation to the faith can be summarized as follows. Number one, we are to teach it. Jesus declared that our mission was to preach the gospel to the whole world, as found in Mark 16 and verse 16. Secondly, Christians are under obligations to live their lives consistent with the principles of the New Testament system. Paul would say this in Philippians 1 verse 27, "Let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ." One of the ways that we earnestly contend for the faith is through our influence, our example that we set in front of others. But thirdly, as far as contending earnestly for the faith, we are to be prepared and willing to defend the faith. Paul told the Philippians that he had been providentially brought to Rome in chains for a special reason, to defend the gospel, chapter 1 and verse 7. And so when the Bible says we are to contend earnestly for the faith, that simply means we are to defend the truth. Now, not only did Jude say that we are to contend earnestly, he also said that we are to contend earnestly for the faith. Now that becomes an important word as well, the faith. How does Jude use the word faith in this context? Now the word faith can be used in different ways in the Bible. the word faith can first of all be used in a subjective sense. And that refers to our personal faith. That refers to what I believe or what you believe about that situation. When we say I have faith in Jesus, that simply means that I have put my personal trust in Him. Now, one reads in the Bible of great faith, and one reads in the Bible of weak faith, as in Matthew 8, verse 10, and Romans 14 and verse 1. But this is all subjective. The Bible also uses the word faith in an objective sense. And when the Bible talks about faith in that way, it's talking about a body of doctrine. It's talking about the gospel system. The Bible uses that in several places. For example, in Acts 6 and verse 7, the Bible says that there were a number of priests who were obedient to the faith, used in the sense of the gospel, the body of doctrine. In Galatians 1 verse 23, Paul mentions about being obedient to the faith and about preaching the faith. In 1 Timothy 4 and verse 1, Paul talks about falling from the faith. You see, these are all used objectively, and it refers to the gospel system, a body of doctrine. And that seems to be the sense in which Jude uses the expression here, when he says that we are to contend earnestly for the faith. We are to contend for the faith, for a body of doctrine, for the Christian system. You will notice in the passage that the faith is singular. He says we are to contend for the faith. He does not say we are to contend for the faiths, as if there are many types of faith. There's only one. And that one faith is the Christian doctrine, the Christian system. Another word in this expression that's important is the word delivered or was delivered. Jude would say that we are to contend earnestly for the faith that was delivered. It's important to see that this expression is passive in nature. Now, when we talk about something being passive, a verb being passive, it simply means that the subject does not do the acting, it is being acted upon. In this case, the Bible is saying that the faith was something that was given to man. It was not something that man developed. It was not something that man came up with his own. The faith is something given to us from heaven, not from our own works, not something we invented or we produced. Paul described it this way in Galatians 1, verse 11. For I made known unto you, brethren, as touching the gospel which was preached by me, that it is not after man. For neither did I receive it from man, nor was I taught it, but it came to me through the revelation of Jesus Christ. As a divinely given system, the faith cannot be added to, it cannot be subtracted from, it cannot be modified in any way. We cannot change the faith because, you see, it was delivered to us. We did not deliver it, it was delivered to us. Next, another important word in this little expression is the word once, or once for all. The Bible says, contend earnestly for the faith that was once delivered to the saints. Now, the term once literally means once for all. And it's not something that can be repeated again and again and again, even at later times. In Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 28, as an example, the Bible says, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. You see, Jesus was crucified one time, only one time. He wasn't crucified several times. He wasn't crucified back in about AD 33, and then again in AD 500, and then again in AD 1000 or 1500, any other time. Jesus was crucified once. And so when the Bible uses that same expression for the faith, it's saying that the faith was delivered once. Jude was anticipating the completion of the Christian body of doctrine, and there would be no new continuing revelation. God's system of truth was fully and finally made known in the New Testament. There is no new revelation. There is no ongoing revelation with accompanying spiritual gifts. The Bible says that the faith was once and once for all delivered to the saints. And it was delivered once in the first century. And we have that described or written today in the New Testament. Again, as we're saying, there is no new revelation in our day today. Now, another term that's important in this little expression as well is the word Saints. The Bible says, contend earnestly for the faith that was once delivered to the saints. The faith was delivered to the saints. They are the guardians of the faith. Now the question is, who are the saints? Were the saints a special group of people? We sometimes become confused because of the word saints and the way that some other religions use that term. We hear, for example, of Saint Patrick. We hear of Saint Nicholas, or other individuals that have been designated as saints. In some churches, special people, people that are believed to be important spiritually or have done great things for society, are elevated to the role to where they're called saints. However, in the New Testament, in the Bible, the word saints is used in reference to Christians. It's used in reference to all of God's people. And so we then see that this passage becomes a command for all of us. The Bible simply tells us to earnestly contend for the faith that was once delivered to the saints. We are to all earnestly contend for the faith. We are not to allow the heat of the battle to fall upon only those few. We must all do our part. Well, as we've seen, the Bible exhorts us to all earnestly contend for the faith. What a challenge that is in our day of confusion, in our day of rapid change. May God help us to have the wisdom to accept this responsibility with devotion, firmness, good sense, love, and commitment. And may God bless you.